Happy Thanksgiving, everyone, and welcome to the Volquest.com mailbag podcast brought to you by our friends at Blue Water Climate Control. And we certainly wish everyone out there a great Thanksgiving and hope you stay safe and hope everybody gets a chance to visit with some of their family, if not all their family, on this Thanksgiving and be thankful for everything that they have, even though it's been obviously a challenging and difficult 2020, and it's a challenging and difficult 2020 for the Tennessee Athletic Department. We'll talk about that and much more in our mailbag podcast here again, presented by Blue Water Climate Control. I'm Brent Hubbs with Rob Lewis and Austin Price. Gentlemen, happy Thanksgiving.
Back at you, Hubbard. Hope the smoke turkey turns out well.
Gobble, gobble.
Gobble, gobbles. Exactly right. All right, let's jump into, speaking of gobble, gobbles, let's jump into some questions here. We'll gobble as many of these as we can up for everybody on this podcast. We'll start with Vol Steelman. What are the odds that Pruitt will be back at 2-8 or 3-7? This is a very popular question throughout the podcast, so we're not going to revisit it 4 or 5 different times in this podcast, but obviously we will address it at this point. I think, if again, I've said this, if I were guessing right now, I think Jeremy Pruitt's going to be back next year. Is that an absolute? Is that definite? I don't think that that's the case at all. But if somebody said right now, what do you think is going to happen? My guess right now is that Jeremy Pruitt is the head football coach at the University of Tennessee next season. What say you guys? Austin, we'll start with you.
Brent, I've thought long about it. I went up and spent yesterday with my side of the family, and then with my in-laws today, and I thought a lot about it during the drive, and I started thinking about timelines. And, if you're going to make a move, to me, you can't wait on that Vanderbilt game on the 19th, which is the date that everybody's kind of pinned that one in.
Right.
Because that's post-signing day. Like, you really going to let this class sign and then make a move on the coach 3 days later? I just don't see that. So, I lean heavily towards him being back unless something's done like in the next week. And I just don't think that's going to be the case. Again, Tennessee's likely to play Florida next Saturday, Brent, with not a full complement of top end players. They've got several out due to contact tracing, some big names. And, that's something that, everybody's had to deal with at some point or another during COVID. But all of a sudden you're playing one of your main rivals at a game that nobody really gives you a chance anyways. And then now you're playing without, several of your top players. To me, that's going to be, it's almost a feather in the cap for Jeremy to be able to say, I didn't have my guys. And again, I think that when you look at the timeline, that signing day is the 16th. They don't play Vanderbilt till the 19th. If everything goes off like it's supposed to. Now, granted, it could change. I just think it lends itself to him being back unless something goes dramatically wrong over the next 3 weeks.
Well, I think they're going to probably more likely play Vanderbilt on the 12th than the 19th, based on some of the things that Coach Fulmer has indicated and said even on Vol calls on Wednesday night a little bit. But even in that scenario, Austin, I think your point on the timeline is well taken. Even if Vanderbilt is played the 12th, that's the Saturday before signing day starts on Wednesday. You're not. I mean, are you going to make a change on Sunday and expect that group of guys to sign on Wednesday?
Normally
you have hard.
Normally most coaches are fired. The 24th, 25th, 26th, and that of November. Normally there's a 4 to 7 day window to hire a coach. You've got somebody in place by December 3rd or 4th, and they've got a couple of weeks. This would leave you no time. But I just said the 19th based off the fact that talking to Coach Pruitt the other night, he felt like that game was going to be the 19th. And talking to somebody else down at the SEC office, they felt like that game was going to be the 19th as well. But that
may very well be.
The 19th contradicts the whole notion of getting the division games in, which is what the thing that they've talked about this entire time.
Yeah, I just think two things: COVID-19 and $16 million roughly total buyouts for Jeremy and assistants. I mean, I think that this is a year with an asterisk on it. I mean, you can't sell that Tennessee made progress this year, but you also, I mean, I'm not using COVID as an excuse, but it's just been a season unlike any other. I think you couple that with the astronomical buyout in a year where they're losing 40 to 50 million in the athletic department, and I think he's back.
I continue to go back, and I know we're ready to move on to the next question. I continue to go back to the fact that in my heart of hearts, I truly believe the anger and angst among the fans would be so dramatically different had JG not started post Kentucky. That's really, to me, when the anger started to build, when they played Bama, and then when they played Arkansas, and then when they played, obviously, this past game against Auburn. It's been the last month of him going back out there. Everybody was ready to move on to Harrison Bailey. And again, the anger went from being mad about JG to all of a sudden that anger shifted towards Coach Pruitt because he was the one putting him back out there. And they're just done with seeing number 2.
And think about this too. As bad as Tennessee's been, if you play an 8-game SEC schedule with 4 non-conference games, say even if you lose at Oklahoma, what are you sitting there right? I mean, you're sitting there right now at what, 5-3, 5-4 with 3 to play, or no, maybe 5-5. Anyway, you'd have 5 wins, and you wouldn't have played Auburn. You wouldn't be playing Texas A&M. It wouldn't have been a great year, but it wouldn't have felt like it does right now.
Yeah, and Austin, I think you make a great point on the Jared stuff post Kentucky, because it went from can Jared get it done to don't want to see Jared ever again after those 2 pick sixes against Kentucky. I think that's a great point.
Well, I mean, look at our board. I mean, like our board, in our board, Twitter, you look at all these different, type of outlets for people to kind of voice their opinion. And they were all very similar. And they were tired of Jared anyways. Like, they didn't really want Jared to start the first game this year, but they understood, to maybe give him a year 2, first time he's ever had the same coordinator twice. He comes out, he beats South Carolina, he beats Missouri. And then, of course, part of the mistakes at Georgia, to me, were not on him as much as it was other players. But then it just started to build during that Kentucky game. I mean, it was just that game was the game that, they were, every Vol fan, if they had any inkling for Jarrett, went straight out the window.
All right, let's go to S. Pitt Vol, who's got some fun questions here on this Thanksgiving. Favorite Vol of all time, favorite game of all time, favorite coach of all time. Can include assistant coaches. Who wants to go first?
Man, I would probably have to say, I mean,
he didn't say Vol that you covered. He just said Vol. So you can go any way you want to go with this.
Vol that I covered would probably be Chris Lofton. Vol, as a kid, man, I mean, Johnny Jones, man. That's an old school one I was a big fan of. Bill Bates, and everybody who ever paid attention to Tennessee football would have Peyton on that list somewhere.
All right, favorite game, Rob.
Ooh. And 92 Florida, certainly up there.
In the rain? 90 Florida. Yeah. Both those two were good.
And 98 Florida would be. And, I don't remember this one as well, but the Johnny Jones, when Johnny Jones sealed the deal on Alabama, when Tennessee hadn't won that one, and probably my lifetime at that point, that was a big one.
Best basketball game you covered, overtime win over Texas?
I didn't cover that one.
I did.
I was there. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I was thinking about the one that was at Texas. That was, man, I hate to say it. Probably the best basketball game I've covered was the Purdue loss. That was a great basketball game.
Yeah. Yeah. Favorite coach of all time?
Maybe the guy coaching basketball right now.
All right. Let's go to Austin Price for yours. Austin, take it away.
Favorite Vol that I've covered? That's tough. There have been several guys that I really enjoyed. Favorite Vol period. I lean more towards when I was a kid. So like when I was a kid, coming down for my 8th birthday, Larry Lacewell had me down for practice. So I loved that team that had like Dale Carter, Carl Pickens. I think Aaron Hayden was on that team. He's probably my favorite guy to talk to now, post everything. I just think Aaron's just a level-headed dude, and you can just talk about all kinds of stuff with him.
Favorite game?
And then favorite game, I would go 98 Arkansas because I was at that game. That just the end sequence was ridiculous. I would also go that 05 or that overtime Texas game, not the shot over Durant, but the subsequent 5-second call. To me, that's the loudest I've ever heard Thompson Bowling Arena when I've been in there. Favorite coach? We talking head coach or assistant coach?
It says you can include assistant coaches, so you pick anybody you want.
Well, I've been partial to several. I'm partial to the running backs coach now. I really like Coach Pruitt. I think that I know the fans don't necessarily maybe agree right now because they're ready to move on from him. But there's several guys on this staff that I think are really really solid guys. I was always really close with Chief, super guy to deal with. What about you, Hubs?
All right, my favorite coaches of all time. I'm gonna go two. I like Rick Barnes. I enjoy visiting with Rick Barnes. We talk we talk so little basketball. We talk more in the off season than we do during season, just because I find him interesting to talk to. He's fun to deal with. David Cutcliffe, who I've always kept in touch with, was tremendous to me when I was first getting started. And I always had a really good relationship with Rodney Garner. And he wasn't here for a long time, but have continued on with that relationship. Doug Marone's another guy I hit it off with, even though he was only here for a year. And I enjoyed covering Sam Pittman. Those are some of the assistant coaches that jump out to me that you have a chance to get to know. Head coaches are a little bit different because those normal conversations with them are sometimes about stuff they don't want to talk about. And you can talk a little more ball sometimes with an assistant coach, or a little more casual conversation with an assistant coach.
I didn't realize assistants were eligible. I'm sorry, I didn't realize assistants were eligible. I just wanted to make sure I mentioned the great Steve Forbes before we move on.
Yeah, I would add Zach Azani to my list as well.
All right, favorite game of all time for me. 82 Memphis State's first game I ever went to with my dad. One of the very few games I went to with my dad. That game will always wasn't a very good game, but it was a special game for me because I was with my dad at that one. First time I got indoctrinated to Tennessee was in that game with my dad. So that one always stands out. The 95 Alabama game might be the most fun I've ever had watching a game. Just because of the relief everybody had in that game. It was just amazing to see, the crowd and even the people in the Ball Network booth, just this, it was over. The streak was over. So that game always stands out to me. Favorite Vol of all time. Certainly enjoyed covering a lot of those guys in the 90s, Al Wilson, Deion Grant. Those guys were all fun to cover. Enjoyed covering Leonard Little, enjoyed getting to know Leonard Little probably better after he played than when he played. But I think Leonard's a fun guy to cover. Heath Schuler was always very nice to me when I was really young and had no idea what I was doing. So there's a few that jump out to me that way. All right. Pine Mountain Vol solved the argument on the board that the board is having about Bailey having a weak arm and a slow delivery with a hitch in it. What are your thoughts on this topic? I don't know about the hitch because I'm not a quarterback guru. I don't think he gets the ball out of his hand as fast as you would like. I think that's something he has to tighten up, probably shorten his release a little bit. I wouldn't say he's got a weak arm. I don't know that he's got a cannon either, but I wouldn't call it a weak arm, Rob.
No, I mean, two throws. The first one he made, I guess it was Jalen Hyatt on the first completion, about 12, 13 yard out. And the one where Warren made a fingertip snag on over the middle. I thought those were two throws that jumped out to me that, showed some velocity. Now, was he, I mean, he doesn't have a cannon. I'm not saying that, but Jamarcus Russell can throw it through a brick wall. What's he been doing the last 10 years? And Drew Brees, meanwhile, I don't know if he can throw it 25 yards down the field anymore. And I'm not saying Harrison's either one of those. I'm just saying arm strength is not remotely close to being all playing quarterbacks about.
Yeah, it's all about getting the ball out on time. And Coach Pruitt brought up a great point on his show on Sunday. And that's that Harrison throws that would be labeled a soft ball. It's an easy ball to catch, not a heavy ball, that some of these other quarterbacks throw. So he throws a ball that is easier to catch than the other guys. But yeah, his going back to spring practice, he had that one practice that we were out there at, and everybody put out their 30-second video of him. And how many Vol fans, I don't know how many I saw on Facebook and Twitter, they're like, "Well, that's an arm." Harrison's got the 4th out of 4 arms as far as the quarterback. But again, I agree with Rob. That's overrated. Like, that's only, you're talking about a small amount of throws where you have really got to have an excellent arm to make those throws. So, I mean, I think that he'll be fine. And I'm with Hubs. I'm not seeing any kind of hitch in the throwing motion. I just think that right now he's a freshman. He's getting his first playing time. I think his head will spin more next Saturday, if providing he gets the start, and I think he will, when he's seeing the first team D right out of the gate and not, a defense that's, dropping people.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to combine a couple of questions here. One, is this truly Hugh Freeze's dream job? And two, would Tennessee look to hire Freeze, or is there too much baggage there? We'll marry those
Yes,
two.
yes, I believe it is his dream job. He's told people that. And then, as far as, would Tennessee hire him? I don't know. I think that depends on, who's making the hire, and how everybody feels about things. I mean, I think most people in America give second chances now. So I don't think anybody's going to condemn the guy forever. That doesn't mean that, the person making the hire at Tennessee would, have them at the top of the list. Maybe they have somebody else. But again, Jeremy Pruitt's Tennessee's head coach, and I said this when Butch was the head coach. It's really unfair to speculate about anything like that until they have an opening.
All right,
I don't think they would hire him.
Go ahead, Rob.
I don't think they would hire him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what some people of influence around the decision makers. I don't know where they would stand on it at this point in time. So
I'm not saying that's my opinion on whether they should. That's my opinion on what they would do. I just don't think that's a Tennessee thing.
Rocky Top Tennessee Vol wants to know any rumors of recruits that might be cut or flip. Is everyone expected to sign in December as of now?
This is an interesting point because we get closer and closer, and I brought this up to somebody the other day. Is like if you're gonna cut a kid or decide to go in a different direction, this is a pandemic where like kids aren't allowed to take visits. So like if you're doing that, I in my opinion, you've got to do that now. Like you cannot wait till December 12th and then say, yeah, we're going to go in a different direction, because that's just not fair. So like at some point, if Tennessee's going to go in a different direction with a kid, they've got to do it, to me, sooner rather than later. Wait till I just think that that's too big of a PR nightmare, Brent, during a pandemic to do that at the last hour.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good look. I mean, I think you take criticism for that. Rob, don't you feel like it's in probably all these kids' best interest to go ahead and sign in December, because there's no advantage to waiting till February?
Can't take visits. Yeah, I would think so. That would be my take. I mean, no coach is coming to your high school. I mean, you're not going to check anybody's campus out. And AP, I completely 100% could not agree more with AP that you need to be having some tough conversations right now.
And I don't have right at this current moment, as we sit here on Thanksgiving, I have no problem if any school decides to go in a different direction on a kid. Like, some people may disagree. They may think, well, that's not, this year you shouldn't do that. I have no issue with it. I do have more of an issue with it if we do it, doing it a week before signing day, like or less. Like I just think that, I just don't think that's fair to kids. Period.
All right, Stephen Valencio Jackson wants to know: will the basketball Vols pick up a tune-up game for December 8th or 9th before Cincinnati? Rob Lewis.
They are trying, and they might pick up a game, that's not on the schedule for after Cincinnati. But it's the wild west in non-conference basketball scheduling right now. I mean, assistants are. I know Mike Schwartz that does it for Tennessee. It's it was just driving him crazy in October, November, trying to piece together a schedule. So answer, yes, they're trying to. Can they? I don't know.
Don't you think though that once we even get into conference play, Rob, you're going to see non-conference games picked up in the middle of conference season, just because you're going to have this run of teams from here and there that end up having to miss a couple of weeks, and so all of a sudden teams that normally had, let's say, Ole Miss on the schedule, but they're out, and all of a sudden they're having to pick up anybody just to have games. I mean, so you don't have a long stretch.
I think that's definitely a possibility, for sure.
Be interesting to see how everybody navigates their conference schedule, and how many games can you pick up on the fly, which is what Tennessee is trying to do right now. Probably would be easier to pick them up on the fly in December than it would be in January when everybody's into their regular conference grind. But I'm with you guys. I think you do everything you can to try to play a game. All Vol 31 wants to know what's the overall attitude of the players towards Pruitt and his coaching staff at this point. How is the current staff chemistry on this team? I haven't polled the players. I didn't think the players quit against Auburn. I thought they were ready to play out of the gate. Thought they played well, with the exception of a handful of plays. And I don't think you can look at that team in the second half and say, boy, they just completely laid down. So that's kind of where I am with the players at this point. Are they all happy? No, I'm sure they're not. And frustrations, are there frustrations with coaches? I'm sure there are. There is every year, regardless of what's going on. But I just haven't seen a team. I didn't see a team that quit Saturday night at Auburn, which tells me it may not be as bad as some people want to perceive it to be out there.
I mean, I agree with you completely, Hubbard. That's something I was looking for. I mean, I thought the effort was good. I mean, the execution a lot of times, was not, but I thought the effort was good. And I was, specifically watching for that, just because all the questions people have had is, about are these kids still fighting hard for him?
Yeah. I mean, Tennessee goes into every game and they've fought their butts off. I mean, again, you could go back to the second half of Kentucky after that 3 and out. Maybe you can say, did they really give a full effort that second half? It seemed like probably not, but everything else they have. And this is a team that, they look like Marvin Harry just getting hit in the, face with paint cans on Home Alone, in the second half of most games. So, kudos to them for, bringing it.
Austin Price with a Christmas reference on Turkey Day.
Drake.
Hey, hold on a minute. This question from When Can I Start? Brent, is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
Absolutely, it's a
Don't
Christmas
get me
movie.
started.
It's absolutely a Christmas movie, without question. Why not?
No.
Well, sure it is.
It is not. It was released in July.
Is Home Alone a Christmas movie?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Wow, they could have left him at Home Alone at Easter. Could have run
But
that
they
thing
didn't.
then.
It was based around Christmas.
Well, so was Die Hard. It was based around a Christmas party. It was based around a Christmas party, Austin Price. Absolutely.
Hey,
Die Hard is a Christmas movie. All right, let's go with more questions.
Is Dixieland a lot about Tennessee or Alabama?
It's about Tennessee. That's the way it was written, right?
That from Baltimore.
All right, let's go to iHeart's Vols here. Is it too unrealistic to conclude that the reason for this abysmal season is simply COVID-19? Most of our players and coaches are away from their families and probably have loved ones affected both physically and economically by the pandemic. Same could be said for Michigan, Nebraska, Penn State, etc. Yeah, but you got teams out there that aren't losing. So you're saying that Clemson's not been affected, or Alabama's not been affected, or Indiana, Ohio State, some of these other teams. I mean, I think COVID-19 affected Tennessee greatly because they had a bunch of guys miss practice. It was interesting hearing Jeremy Pruitt on the teleconference talk about how K'Ron Calvert had missed 4 weeks at the start and just wasn't ready to play at the start of the year, but complimented him on his play against Auburn in the Auburn game. Now, maybe he should have played earlier. Maybe that's a coaching mistake there. But fact of the matter is, I mean, it has affected Tennessee, but it's affected everybody. So I don't know that you can just come back and say Tennessee's where they are right now only because of COVID. I think you can say Tennessee's where they are right now more because of quarterback play than they are COVID. That's just my opinion.
I mean, I don't disagree with that. I mean, I think COVID has affected everybody. Teams that are undefeated, teams that are winless. I think that in some form or fashion, it has affected them. Has it affected Tennessee's ability to get good quarterback play? No. But has it affected younger players from developing quicker because certain players had to, miss due to quarantine? I think that's absolutely true. I mean, a guy like Cade Mays and Wanya Morris, when all said and done, are going to have, over 40 days of quarantine. I mean,
that's a lot.
To say that doesn't matter, I think would be erroneous. And again, I just think that it's mattered in certain ways, and in other ways it hasn't.
All right, let's go to all Vol here. Where do the Vols finish in team rankings and recruiting? What are the chances Tennessee takes a grad transfer quarterback? Any names out there? I'm not aware of any names at this point, Austin, but I think they definitely want to take one.
Yes, I think that right now would be priority number one, which is why I think Tennessee will leave at least one spot open, if not multiple, in this recruiting class.
A bunch of people are getting cut.
What was his first question, Brent?
Where are they going to finish in the rankings, team rankings?
I think they end up finishing top 10 because I think they hold on to most of this class, and you never know who they may add, Brent. I don't think they're out on Nyland Green. I've dug on this all week. I think the Vols still very much are kicking in the mix for Nyland Green.
All right. Army clerk wants to know, does Pruitt really want to be here with all the COVID-19 stuff? How can this program not have a plan for all-season conditioning? We look out of shape and confused about what's happening. Do you think we're a very poorly coached football team? I don't think Jim Chaney's had a great year. I think part of that's quarterback play, but I don't think that's fair to say simply blame that on the quarterback, because I think when you're making that kind of money, you got to compromise. You got to find ways to work around whatever issues that you have there. So I don't think that they've had a great year there. And, defensively, they've obviously had their issues and haven't been able to solve some problems. And as Coach Pruitt said, I think that does start with some coaching. As for the all-season conditioning stuff, I mean, I don't know what plan you wanted them to have, Rob. They weren't on campus. I mean, you can send them a workout to do, but outside of that, I'm not really sure what they were supposed to do in terms of conditioning plans.
Do you guys feel like that they're as out of shape as everybody's letting on? Because I don't feel like this. I do not feel like it seemed that way to me.
Me either. I mean, what it seemed like to me more than anything is they've got an offense that can't score more than 2 touchdowns in a game, and they're severely limited at quarterback. I don't think it's rocket science.
Jeremy Pruitt wants to be here. I think he wants to prove he can be a head coach and he can be successful. So yes, I think Jeremy Pruitt wants to be here. I don't think he wants to get fired. I don't think he wants to get run out of town. I think he took this challenge and wants to prove to everybody that he can do this job. So I mean, that's just my opinion on it. Couple of hoops questions here, Rob. Will Tennessee play a game before 12:15 against Appalachian State? And over and under of 1.5 seniors returning next year. So I guess he's asking, is Fulkerson going to come back and Anasicki?
I would say under, because I'm going to still have to see. I've been told that there's a good chance both those guys come back or one of them comes back, but I still have to see that to believe it. As for 12:15, right now the Cincinnati game is still on. I mean, that's December 12th. That's well outside whether you're talking about the 10 or 14 day quarantine period, whatever it is. So yeah, I anticipate them playing Cincinnati on the 12th.
Hey, Rob.
Yes, sir.
Remember now, they can be under 1.5. As long as one of them comes back, you're going to the golf course.
I'm not going to be a cheap date though, AP. I'm going to have to make my return to the course after like 23 years. We're probably going to.
We're going to the honors. We're going to the honors. All I got to make one call,
guys,
baby.
We're not playing dead horse.
We're going to the honors.
Take a guy who hadn't played golf in 2 decades to the honors course. That'll be fun. Get your video cameras out for that one. Hey, Rob, is there a minimal number of games that Tennessee wants to play or you need to play before you begin SEC play?
I mean, no. There's not like a magic number, but I mean, Rick would have played every other day in December if they could have gotten that many games, if it was feasible. And he was pretty happy with what they got done before the shutdown, and now I think he would take just about as many as he could get that it was logistically possible for them to play.
All right, final question. We're at the gate here. Any idea who the 4th non-conference football game is going to be next season? Austin, I don't know that. Maybe you or Rob have heard something. I'm not sure what the 4th non-conference game looks like. Do you?
No, I don't. I know they play Pitt. They have Pittsburgh the next 2 years, home next year, and then at Pitt in 2022 before they go to BYU in 2023. I would assume it'll be somebody, like a South Alabama or somebody like that, that level of play. I do not see Tennessee, picking up another big timer when you already have Pitt, which is an ACC school. Is next year the year they have Army or Navy or whoever it is on the schedule?
I don't think that's next year. But I'll have to go back and double check that. But I don't think that's the case. All right, he's got a couple more questions here. Why doesn't the SEC go ahead and release a December football schedule for all the makeup games? Rob, I think that TV's going into the 6-day window for the rest of the year because the conference is going to try to rework the schedule the best they can to get everybody 10 games, with divisional games probably being the first priority. And listen, they want to make sure Florida and A&M play a full schedule, because those are the two teams, along with Alabama, that have a chance to make the college football playoff. So whether anybody likes it or not, they're going to make sure they're going to rework that schedule if they need to make sure those three teams have the best resume they can have for the college football playoff, which means playing 10 games when some of your big, Big Ten schools aren't going to be close to that. And that might come into play when you talk about your playoff rankings.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. You're going to find out Monday afternoon about noon every week what the Saturday game times are, and Florida and A&M are playing 10.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Even if they have to play somebody twice.
All right, pumpkin pie or pecan pie?
Pumpkin pie.
Rob Lewis is checking out on both.
I mean, I'm not.
That's chocolate pie for Rob Lewis on Thanksgiving.
Well, I agree with that. I
will go back for a second helping of stuffing or mashed potatoes and gravy before I will go with dessert.
No sweets for Rob Lewis. Can you believe that, Austin Price? No sweets.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a health thing. It's just not I'm much more of a starchy.
I just can't stand the look of a pecan pie. I just can't handle it.
What, the syrup, the pecans themselves? I mean, what?
Yes, like them laying there. It looks like a brain. I just can't handle it.
You know what? I even like those Little Debbie pecan pies that come wrapped up in a little tin full packet there, AP. You can always roll a pecan pie out there.
I'm sure you do, Hubs.
Always a pecan pie over a pumpkin pie. All right, listen, that's going to do it for this edition of the Volquest.com Mailbag Podcast. Again, we want to thank our friends at Blue Water Climate Control, and they certainly wish everybody out there a happy Thanksgiving. If you have needs for your HVAC unit, be sure and give them a call at 865-299-2290. They can take care of whatever you need. They'll send a technician out to discover and look at your problem and evaluate it and tell you exactly what you need. They're not going to upsell you on something that you don't need. They're going to take care of you the right way when they send their team of experts out to look at whatever issue that you're dealing with. Be sure and check them out online at bluewaterclimatecontrol.com or on Twitter at blueh2o_climate. Call them today at 865-299-2290 for any need that you may have. On behalf of Rob Lewis and Austin Price, we want to wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy the day with your family, and we will talk to you on Friday, and we'll see if Tennessee can play football next week against the Florida Gators, and we'll see where basketball is at. But that's going to do it for this edition of the podcast. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.